Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me is Andrew Meadows. And also joining us today is a very special guest. Welcome to the podcast, James Bailey. How you doing?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Nice to have you.
Yeah. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm still hyped up from that from the show we're covering this week. It's good stuff.
Seriously?
Yeah. And what show is that?
That would be Stranger Things season 2, and it continued the vibes that it set forward in the first season. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think we've got plenty to talk about regarding Stranger Things. We'll save that for later. We're going to go ahead and jump into our news for the week, starting in the DC film world, Andrew's favorite subject of all time. Now, I think this is actually good news, though. And I'll tell you why. So this is coming from Hollywood Reporter. They're telling us that Deathstroke is going to be getting his own movie, and moreover, it's going to be written and directed by Gareth Evans, the director of The Raid and The Raid 2. If that doesn't sound like a match made in heaven, then I don't know what is.
It doesn't get better than that, no. Especially not for a Deathstroke movie, you know?
Deathstroke's such a fucking cool character, and we've seen a bit of him and Arrow on the CW as played by Manu Bennett, and I love the character there. Teen Titans, he's obviously been a huge part of as well. He's just a super cool character, and the rumor for a while, and I guess it probably may have been more than rumor given that he was actually cast, but he was supposedly going to be the villain in the solo Batman movie with Ben Affleck, which has gone through a lot of creative reshuffling basically since Batman v Superman came out. So Joe Manganiello has been cast as Slade Wilson / Deathstroke, and he's been in a few things. I'd say probably most notably he was on True Blood. He was in the Magic Mike films, and for me, I remember him as Flash Thompson from the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. But I'd say probably the most holy shit part of this news is Gareth Evans' attachment to this project. So, I mean, you guys have seen The Raid 2?
Oh, it was incredible. Incredible stuff. So good.
Yeah, if this Deathstroke movie has anywhere close to the choreography that The Raid and The Raid 2 have, I'm completely on board with this. And like you said, I think it's a perfect match for the character.
Mm-hmm. You know, for as many things as DC seems to get wrong and will probably be getting wrong in the very near future, as in like the next 3 weeks near future, they do sometimes get things right. And I would say that this is an example of the latter. I guess I just find it weird how the DC movies just seem to shift wildly from one extreme to the other. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad, both in terms of the movies and the announcements for future projects. And I guess I get that there's not really a Kevin Feige type personality running the show the way that Marvel has it structured, but it just seems crazy to me.
I thought for a while there it seemed like they were kind of splitting the universe to try to make it more individualized, like not necessarily be as threaded as like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it seems like they just keep going in that connected universe direction. Whereas like I feel like you said, the kind of setup that they have at that studio would behoove them to do individual movies, not necessarily connected. Like this Deathstroke movie not being connected to like Justice League would probably be a plus for it.
Probably. Pretty much anything coming out in the future not being connected to Justice League would probably be a plus for it, to be fair. Something that isn't directly connected to Justice League, but will be taking place in the same universe that we got some news on this week is Shazam, which is going to be coming to us from David F. Sandberg, who just recently did Annabelle Creation, and I think he did Lights Out last year. So he's kind of like a horror type director, at least in his past work. He's directing the Shazam movie, and we just got word that Zachary Levi, probably most notably Chuck from the Chuck TV show, and Vandal from Thor: The Dark World, is going to be Shazam himself, or Captain Marvel if they happen to call him that in the movie. So not the casting I was expecting for this, personally.
I could see it, though. He's got a face for kind of...
Well, and it's probably unfair of me to say this, but when I think about Shazam in the comic books, I mean, I think massive John Cena-esque body. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't really like holding people to unrealistic body standards like that. I mean, we saw Basically when Gal Gadot got cast as Wonder Woman, like it was a fucking shit show as far as the response to her being cast. And of course it's laced with all sorts of misogyny and sexism that made it even worse than it already is. So I don't really want to go down that road with this, but it is one of those things where I in my back of my mind I'm like, oh, he's gonna need to hit the gym a little bit, huh?
Well, there's one thing that DC does know how to do, and they put a lot of it in their movies is CG. You know, they could just CG some muscles on him.
Okay, so would you do a full mocap suit for him and then just mocap his whole body?
I think if any of their previous movies is an indicator, I would say they would definitely full CG his body. They'll just put his face on him.
It worked out so well with Green Lantern when they did the full body suit. It was such a good look.
Yeah, right. That's what they're gonna do.
Okay, perfect. And I now that I think about it and kind of looking at this, it kind of seems like maybe they're probably more concerned with, hey, let's get a guy that is going to bring a lot of things to this role besides just looking the part. I
will say I like Zachary Levi for the role because I don't know if you guys have seen Chuck, but he has this sort of like boyish charm to him that I feel like he can bring to the role that like is like half of the coin of Shazam, like a little boy in a big man's body. So I'm gonna reserve judgment. I think he definitely, like you were saying, he could probably put on a few pounds, but
and I say I'm not gonna. I honestly I'm gonna take a step back from that. I said that was my initial reaction was that I don't think he's big enough, and then I'm like, well, that's very narrow-minded to think. That was just my initial response looking at this. Like I think that again, I think the angle they're probably taking with this is like, hey, let's not go for the guy with the biggest muscles in the world. Let's get a guy that fits the role, kind of what you're saying. Shazam is literally a character who is a little kid who can transform into this superhero with ridiculous proportions, as portrayed in the comics typically. But it's not about that. It's about him being kind of a goody two shoes in a lot of ways. He's very Superman-esque, I think, in terms of personality, at least kind of in the times that I've read his character, which I've never really read any of his solo stuff, but he's appeared in a lot of DC stuff. And I think that getting an actor like Levi who can probably kind of capture that spirit. I haven't watched Chuck, so I'm taking your word for it on that front, but it seems like he has a very charismatic personality, which I think that could translate very well to a role like this. So I'm excited to see where they go with this movie. It could be fun. Moving on. There was an interview with James Mangold, who's the director on Logan, which came out earlier this year and is a fantastic movie. He's saying that he's working on a script for a kind of spin-off solo movie starring X-23, who, spoilers for Logan, is the daughter, effectively, of Logan. She's kind of cloned from his genetic material, but she's basically a many female version of Wolverine, and she also kicks some ass.
She's got claws on her toes too.
She does have claws on her toes. Yeah, it sounds like from what he's saying, this is probably a good ways off. But it's good to know that at least this is something that is actively kind of churning, in his brain that he's working on. And I think that it's kind of a no-brainer to do something with this character because she was so fucking cool in Logan. And the fact that, again, Logan spoilers, there's not exactly a whole lot of Logan to go around anymore. And I don't know that the movie really kind of set it up as like she's taken the mantle or anything like that. But it definitely left me with a lot of intrigue for her character. And in terms of, I'd watch a movie about her. I mean, what about you guys?
Yeah, hell yeah, I would.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, she was probably my favorite part of that movie, so I'm excited to hear that she'll be continuing in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, would you guys rather see her be in her own movie, or would you rather have her kind of maybe be integrated into some of the other X-Men properties?
Yeah, I think I'd rather see her integrated, just because it's like I worry that she might not be able to hold her own film.
I think I don't know, her own independent movie sounds pretty cool. If it's got Mangold in it, or not Mangold in it, but if he's a part of it, I'll be eager to watch it just on that alone, just because of Logan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. And follow-up question, I guess, is, when we saw Laura X-23 in this movie, she's pretty young. I don't know exactly how old she was. I'd guesstimate 10 maybe or something like that. Would you want to see her story pick up exactly where it left off, or at least close enough that Daphne Kane would reprise the role, or would you rather see kind of maybe a grown-up version of her?
I guess I didn't really humor that. Yeah, you bring up a good point. Like I was kind of assuming that we would pick up right where she left off, and I feel like that would be kind of, because she's so young, for her to carry a movie on her own would be like, it just would make more sense in my opinion for her to be in another movie. But if they gave her a little time to grow up, I think that'd be awesome.
No, I think I would enjoy seeing the same girl reprise the role. I think it would be good. I'd enjoy seeing her again.
Yeah, I mean, she did such a good job with it too.
Do you think we get an R-rated X-23 movie?
It has to be, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, it's Fox. Let's not put it past them to, well, she's a kid, so, we got to make it PG.
But at the same time, I think it would be difficult for them to have a spinoff on a movie that was rated R.
And very rated R at that.
Right. And try to scale it back to a 13 rating. I don't think that it would be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I know. Like I said, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, Fox does a lot of things that I don't think would be successful. They do it anyway, so.
Knock on wood, yeah, that seems like it would be a very short-sighted a move to make. So just to kind of throw my opinion into the hat, I would like to see Daphne Keane reprise the role personally, and it doesn't have to pick up immediately with them, wherever they are in the mutant haven or supposedly in Canada that they went to at the end of Logan. But I think close enough in time period where she could come back, and you got to make it rated R. Absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it. Last bit of movie news for the week is dealing with another Captain Marvel over in the Marvel universe. Very confusing, I understand, because I think DC actually originally had Captain Marvel as one of their characters, and then there was some later litigation between Marvel and DC that basically led to DC rebranding Captain Marvel as Shazam, and he's actually known as, I think he's actually known now as Shazam in the comic books as well. There was a time period where his book was called Shazam, but he was still called Captain Marvel. But I digress. Captain Marvel on the Marvel side of the world is just called Captain Marvel, and she's going to be played by Brie Larson in a movie coming out in 2019. Also starring Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, and other casting news, and this hasn't been confirmed, mind you, but it sounds like Marvel is circling Ben Mendelsohn to take on the villainous role for this movie. He most recently played a villainous role in Director Krennic from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So this wouldn't exactly be treading any new territory for him, but it'd be a good pick, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. James and I were talking before the podcast, and I mean, if he's in it, generally, I'll go see it. Yeah,
like Andrew said, we were talking, and anything he's in, I'll go see for the most part. I don't know. I saw Bloodline on Netflix, and he was great in that. He also played kind of like an antagonist role. He's just a good Australian actor. He's just got it.
Did either of you guys see Animal Kingdom?
No.
I think I have your Blu-ray that I borrowed still.
Yeah, it's an Australian family crime movie, and it's pretty strong movie. It's pretty great.
Cool, I'll check it out.
He was in that. And it was pretty good.
Yeah. So back to kind of Captain Marvel. We don't really know who he would play. We do know that the Skrulls, the shape-shifting aliens from the comics, are going to be kind of the big villains of this movie. So I don't know if he would play a Skrull. I don't know if they would kind of bury him under makeup or mocap suits, or exactly how they're planning on bringing the Skrulls to life. But like I said, it doesn't matter. I'm cool with this. Marvel knows what they're doing. Thor comes out in a week. It's getting rave reviews. It's at this point, Marvel seems infallible, and that's probably gullible of me to kind of fall into that line of thinking. But until they kind of prove to me that they don't know what they're doing, cool. I'm willing to trust them, and it helps when their paychecks clear. I really appreciate this paychecks. Marvel, keep sending them.
Do I get one just for the week, or how does that work?
Yeah, we'll cut you in.
I just want to say that I don't see any flops anytime in the future. Black Panther looks amazing. I mean, Thor Ragnarok's going to be great.
I think they fixed their issues that they had with their creative processes, mostly in terms of meddling influences from high above. Like, they've kind of gotten out from under that, and now they're just hiring ridiculously talented filmmakers, hiring ridiculously talented actors and actresses. Like, at some point something might not work as well as they want it to, but it's, they've got basically Disney / unlimited resources to pull from, and just super talented folks working on a lot of their stuff.
A lot of passionate people too, though. You know what I mean? Everybody that seems involved now, they're all actors, so I guess you got to take it with a grain of salt. But everybody seems genuinely enthusiastic about everything they're doing. You know what I mean? They're all very passionate.
Definitely. After the Edgar Wright stuff, it seems like they've just given creatives their opportunity to create, and that if it goes well, it goes well, and if it's not as well received, they'll probably tweak it a little with studio input. But for the most part, they're just letting people have fun. Like Taika is just such an interesting choice for a Marvel film. So can't wait to see Ragnarok.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Taika Waititi is the perfect, they hired him kind of as a director.
They've done that numerous times though, where you're left scratching your head as to how did they get that job?
Well, I mean, the Russo brothers had catapulted from, we did a few episodes of Community in one shitty movie with Owen Wilson, to we now have the keys to the Marvel Kingdom with two massive and Avengers movies that they're tackling as we speak. And so I mean, and it's not just them, it's a lot of guys that are just like, oh, they did one thing that was pretty good but no one really heard about, or they did a few things that, like in the case of Taika Waititi, he did a lot of things that people heard about and people really liked, but tonally speaking were very, very out there, very offbeat, and certainly a far cry from what Marvel had done in the past. But at the same time, and we haven't seen Ragnarok yet, obviously it hasn't come out in the States yet, but you can look at the trailer and it still feels like Taika. It doesn't feel like Marvel's like, do this, do that. Like, he wouldn't sign on the dotted line if they weren't going to let him do his thing. And it's basically just a magical combination from what we could tell of Taika adding his unique style and wit to these Marvel characters that we already know and love. So it's just cool to see that. Like, if we could have that sort of creative love and support for really all comic book movies, like we would be in a golden age. I mean, we are in a golden age of sorts, but it only extends so far. I think it extends certainly to Marvel across the board for Marvel Studios, but it less so towards maybe other Marvel counterparts and certainly the DC counterparts. So that's my opinion on it anyway. Anyway, enough sucking off Marvel at this point. I think that's good enough for our checks to clear, as I said. So
you come yet, Marvel?
Well, I was ready to make a transition. I was like, let's talk about our TV news. And then I just looked at our first bit of TV news and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, it is more Marvel. But to be fair, this is Marvel Television we're going to be talking about. And Marvel Television is a distinct entity from Marvel Studios and one that offers up the likes of Marvel's Iron Fist and Marvel's Inhumans. So they are putting out
home runs.
Yeah, oh yeah, some critical home runs for sure, and stuff that we really, really, really love. But of things that we do legitimately love, at least I think Andrew and I have spoken on it at length in the past on this podcast, is Marvel's Daredevil, which we know is getting a season 3, and we now know that Vincent D'Onofrio is coming back as Wilson Fisk. And he'll also be joined behind the scenes by a new showrunner, which is actually the third new showrunner in the span of 3 seasons. Season 1 was handled by Stephen S. DeKnight, who had done Spartacus and is now doing Pacific Rim Uprising. And then Season 2 was handled by Doug Petrie and Marco Ramirez, who then went on to Marco Ramirez went on to showrun The Defenders, and then Petrie was involved in that, but I think he departed kind of early in the process. So we're getting a lot of creative shuffling again with this. I think the season 1 to 2 transition was handled pretty well. I stand by my thoughts that we've expressed, that I liked season 2 better than season 1, while acknowledging that it was definitely a messier season. So I'm not too worried about this. The new showrunner's Eric Olson, who his probably best credit is doing The Man in the High Castle over at Amazon Studios, which I think has gotten reviewed pretty well. I have never seen it, so I can't really speak for its quality. And then his lesser credits is that he worked on Arrow season 3.
Oh, Christ.
It's better than Arrow season 4. So new showrunner, Kingpin's back.
I like that. I like that Kingpin's a regular. I think that adds to his his tenacity as an antagonist. You know what I mean? I think he's I always thought he was a really cool character. You know what I mean? And Daredevil has a lot of characters that they could draw from, but I like the fact that they continue to bring him back.
Yeah, I totally agree. As much as the first season is about Daredevil, it's so much about Fisk as well. And for them to bring him back is just such a smart decision, because even in season 2, where he had a lesser role, I loved seeing him. It was a highlight to see him back. It was fun in season 2. So I'm glad he's coming back for 3.
Yeah. Daredevil, I think, is kind of the high point for Marvel television, or at least the Marvel Netflix television. And so I'm really looking forward to a season 3 and having probably the best villain that the show has seen come back and what appears to be a pretty extended role. It sounds like a good combination to me. So looking forward to it. And then and other Marvel TV news while we're on the subject and while we're getting paid for it. We got an official trailer for the Runaways on Hulu, which this is coming off the back of the teaser trailer that we got at New York Comic Con, so not too long ago. So there wasn't a whole lot of downtime between these two trailers. But this is a show that is starting up on Hulu within the next few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's towards the end of November. I don't have the exact date in front of me. So we got a bit of new footage in this one. We got some shots of Old Lace, the Velociraptor. That's part of the crew, and we got a little bit more effects shot in this. We saw some powers being used, and the looks of this show, it's really appealing to me.
It definitely looks pretty cool. I'm intrigued.
James, have you read any Runaways, any of the comic books by any chance?
No, I have not. But I have looked into it a little bit. I know kind of some of the backstory, and I can't remember if in the first trailer we saw any of the Velociraptor, but having seen it in this trailer, I was like, thank God that they're gonna go that weird and that fun, because that's what the show, that's what something that you need. If the source material has something that crazy and out there, you gotta pull that in.
Yeah, like you just go balls to the wall with it. Like I hate when properties are afraid to embrace their source material, like they're scared of it. Like, it was written that way for a reason, and I understand that sometimes things don't always translate to a visual medium like film, and so necessarily sometimes you have to make changes. But something that I think that's pretty central to it, like, when you have a featured character that is a raptor, it's so out there. Like clearly that's the tone that they're trying to set. So why would you not have something like that? And I'd say probably the thing that I'm liking most about them, including Old Lace, is that they're using kind of, it looks like an animatronics style to having them in there. I think that for a show, for certainly for TV shows, if you're not Game of Thrones and you're not pouring millions of dollars into your effects budgets on dragons and shit, like I feel like having a raptor kind of run around could look very, very not good. Talking about Inhumans, we saw basically Lockjaw. It looked okay. He probably looks fine on the TV screen. He looked like pure dog shit on an IMAX screen. I can tell you that. Andrew can confirm as well. He's still bitter about the money that he spent on it, for the record. But even then, even for an effect like that, which is basically just a giant dog with markings on his head, they basically had to signlight him after an episode because clearly they didn't have the effects budget to sustain having him on there for any sort of real period of time. And so I think a good way to get around that is to have physical, practical effects, because A, they look better, and B, typically something like that's probably more easy to manage across an entire series, I would think. James, you probably have a little bit slightly more insight on this than maybe we do.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where, like you say, having that practical element to it, it's just going to make it that much easier on the production in general and the actors and the budget especially. So yeah, like you say, it's probably a good idea that they're going with like a somewhat animatronic. Plus, I mean, personally being the kind of person that would rather see more practical augmented by CG, I just feel like it gives a little more integrity to something, to have like that sort of something on set for people to act with, not to mention the craftsmanship that goes into animatronics and all of that.
Yeah, it's a tangible character at that point, you know what I mean?
Not to take away from CG artists or anything, because that's definitely an art as well.
Right, and I think if you have the appropriate budget and time to pull something like that off, I mean, certainly if this was a feature film, it'd probably be a fully CG realized character, or at least heavily CG realized character, vice kind of what they're doing here in the TV show. But I think that's something that you've got to work around your constraints, your limitations. Like, this is probably the best way that they can do it in a way that serves both looking good, from a viewing standpoint, and also just being practical for the production crew to handle, and again, like you said, to kind of help the actors out. So, we will be getting some episodes dropping on this within the next month at least. So, looking forward to it. And what I'm also looking forward to is American Vandal Season 2. It's been officially renewed, guys.
Is it about the dicks?
I was trying to figure out if they were going to continue that storyline, because I feel like they kind of wrapped that up, and I don't really know where they could go with that storyline. So they released a brief little teaser that was just kind of an announcement saying like, hey, this is happening. The implication that I'm getting from it is that it's going to feature Peter, who did the documentary, but it sounds like it's going to focus on a new group of students and presumably a different crime, which I think is probably the best approach to take with this. I feel like, again, I think they kind of covered all the ground they needed to cover with the season 1 with Who Drew the Dicks, so...
You know, it's funny is that it's come full circle now because I watched American Vandal on your guys' recommendation from a podcast episode a couple weeks ago.
Ah.
And what'd you think?
I liked it. I thought it was fun. It was funny, easy to watch. I think the Funny or Die guys were involved, and I thought that was cool that they kind of pushed it in. Like, I mean, it was just asking to be. It's kind of a genre that was just asking to have a spoof made of it. That sort of hyper realistic, like documentary based series that like the documentarian kind of manipulates the audience to lean a certain way in one episode and then a totally different way in the other episode. So, and I think they did it perfectly. It was exactly like watching one of those shows, except they were talking about drawing dicks on a car.
Yeah, it was good. Like I'm really excited for season 2. Which will be coming in 2018. So it sounds like they're going to have a pretty quick turnaround on this. So I think that's enough news. What do you guys think?
Let's jump into Stranger Things.
Stranger Things 2, as they like to call it.
Which you said before the podcast you were a fan of, because I mentioned, instead of saying season 2, Stranger Things 2.
They're not treating this as like a season 2 of a show. Like, this is a straight up fucking sequel to Stranger Things. And I really, really like that. I think that's just such a cool little way to handle it.
It's almost as bold as the show.
Yeah, and so we'll be doing our non-spoilers and spoiler sections as per usual, but I did want to just put it out there for our listeners right off the bat. We're going to be talking Stranger Things spoilers from season 1. So if you haven't had a chance to check out season 1 of Stranger Things, I think all of us heartily recommend that you do so in general.
Especially before you listen to this, though.
Well, obviously, yes, but I mentioned that now just because, when we talk about season 2, our status quo is the end of season 1, so there's no way to really talk about it, even in our non-spoiler section, without really kind of discussing things that happened already in season 1. So that's why I put it out there, but I also am just putting out there that, like, season 1 is fucking great, so go watch it. Like, if you haven't already, it's 8 episodes, it's really tightly paced, it's a really fucking good show. But moving on to season 2, or Stranger Things 2 as they call it, this picks up, I guess, just under a year after the events of the first one. Will Byers, who was taken and stuck in the Upside Down and eventually rescued, is he's kind of back as part of the party with the the group of kids that we met, Mike, Dustin, Lucas from the first season, and things are seems like they're kind of slowly getting back to normal in Hawkins, Indiana. Obviously, Will's had some complications from his his experiences in the Upside Down, but shit goes sideways. You're not going to have a season about nothing, so we'll leave it at that for now. I'll kind of open up this conversation to you guys. I mean, I guess your initial overall impressions of season 2 of Stranger Things. I mean, where'd you guys land on it?
I thought they did a really good job of establishing life after the event. You know what I mean? After all of season 1 and everything else, everybody's continuing life as usual. Will's mom in particular, she doesn't look like she's strung out. She looks halfway normal, and everybody just seems okay. And the tension's there. That's one thing they did a really good job of establishing is, something evidently happened, but we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to really acknowledge it, and we're just life's going on. And I thought they did a really good job of that. I did think that one noticeably different thing was the pacing of the show. They did a really good job, like I said, of establishing this is the status quo, this is what's going on, and the buildup was significantly slower than it was in season 1. Season 1, boom, this has happened, and now we're up for the roller coaster ride. With this one, I think it probably didn't start until probably episode 2 or 3, maybe, and then shit really amped up after that. But like I said, the pacing was completely different. But at the same time, it's a different story being told. You know what I mean? So it's not a criticism. It's just it's an observation.
I agree with you. The pacing was something that I was definitely going to mention. I agree totally with what you said. They just approached it from a totally different angle, and we're coming at it from more of a character development standpoint, because we've already been introduced to the character, so now let's take some time to really dive deep into what's going on with these characters and what makes them tick, and maybe seeing some characters that we didn't see quite as much of, like Will, which they really hooked that actor up. I mean, in the first season, obviously he's taken away, so we don't get much of him, but he had a lot of scenery to chew in this season here.
He did. And I actually was kind of just reading an interview with the Duffer Brothers, who are the creators of the show, about how, you know, the interview basically was kind of just like, hey, you know, Noah Schnapp, who's the kid that plays Will, he didn't really have a whole lot to do in season 1 other than look sickly, aside from basically the first sequence that we see in season 1. So they're like, you know, when you cast him, you know, were you really kind of thinking about the fact that this kid might have a lot to do? Like, was there already plans for possible future seasons, in which case he would be heavily involved and he'd be having to do a lot of heavy lifting? Because, I mean, he gets a ton to do in this season. And, you know, the Duffer Brothers basically said that, yeah, you know, when they cast him, they had in their mind that, you know, he'd have stuff to do in the future. And so they kind of had to cast someone with the thought process that we want to feel comfortable giving him something to do, you know, in the future. And I doubt that they had everything completely mapped out in advance, but it's still pretty insane how much they put on that kid's plate to really play Will. And I thought he crushed it. Really, I mean, all these kids have crushed it since season 1, but you know, for him, he was in season 1, but he really didn't have a whole lot to do. So this is kind of the first time we get a chance to really see Will in action, really kind of be part of the group. And yeah, I thought he did a good job.
You know, it's funny, going back to Marvel really quickly, it kind of reminds me of how Joss Whedon approached Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye character in Avengers 1 and then Avengers Age of Ultron, how he gave him nothing to do. He gave him a robotic, kind of brainwashed character. And then going into Age of Ultron, he was like, look, I understand you didn't have all that much to do from the first one, so we're going to hook you up and we're going to give you a nice little subplot throughout the film. And I feel like that's kind of a good mentality, just because you keep good actors happy and you explore different opportunities. And I don't know, it worked really well for this.
That's a good point. And actually, I'm going to continue your Marvel comparison. When you guys were kind of talking about, I think, James, you were talking about how kind of this one, a lot of it was more focused on the characterization, since we'd already met a lot of these characters in season 1, and, you know, they're heavily established. You know, it's not, you know, we don't really have to go through the process of meeting these characters and understanding who they are. They feel comfortable enough that they can kind of throw you right into it with them. What I thought that this show did really well is I think they had a very similar approach that James Gunn had with Guardians Volume 2, in the sense that since we're comfortable with a lot of these characters, let's pair them off in maybe unexpected ways and create different dynamics between some of these characters that we already know. You know, we know how the party interacts with each other. You know, they're all best friends. Let's throw them with this character there, or let's throw this character with this character there and see what happens. And I think that was a really interesting approach, and it's something that adds, I think, an extra layer to the characterization that we already had. And I thought that was a very interesting approach. And I think that's, you know, with Guardians Volume 2, to talk about that more freely, you know, we got Rocket and Yondu was like a super odd pairing that didn't really seem expected from the first one, and that was kind of the emotional core throughout the entire movie of Guardians Volume 2, and it worked well, and I think it works well here.
Just unexpected dynamics. It's always appreciated.
Yeah, so I kind of just jumping around here. I got to give a shout out to the score.
Oh, yeah.
I love the synth, the 80s synth sound to it, and that kind of combined with the 80s soundtrack of music, which, you know, it just presses all the right buttons for me. It really does. And it's just done so well within this show. It's awesome. And as kind of a follow on to that, the title sequence for this show, like, Netflix has their bullshit skip intro option. I will never skip this intro.
No.
Especially the way they did it with this season, where, you know, it's kind of the same as the first, and then the 2 kind of flashes on in the front and has like a very dramatic sound effect, and it's just cool.
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't looked into it yet, but I think it's like a somewhat, the 2 is kind of a reminiscent of the Ghostbusters 2 logo type thing that they had going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's a little thing, but it's just something for me that just adds to the experience for me.
I thought they did a really good job of replicating the looks and feels of the first season. You know what I mean? Even though you're telling the story in a completely different way, the atmosphere and everything remains the same. And I thought they did a really good job of replicating that feel.
I just wanted to also agree that the soundtrack, the fact that we were getting all those 80s songs, I was like, oh, I think every single one that started up, I was bumping my head to, and I was like, oh my God, I love this song. So it was just cool to hear all that great music.
I don't know if we grew up in the wrong era.
We did.
Well, we have so many wonderful toys that I don't think I'd be willing to give up, but certainly in terms of music, I would be very willing to trade our modern sensibilities for our sensibilities in the 80s. That is without question.
If I was in the 80s, I'd have a mullet.
I would have to get a Will Byers haircut. It's unbeatable, man.
I love just, and I think you guys touched on it. Like, they do such a good job of capturing that aesthetic. I guess I guess you're saying that they did a really good job of keeping it consistent with season 1, and I guess season 1, obviously by extension, really just kind of totally nailed this aesthetic and feel and atmosphere and everything like that.
They did a really good job.
I was listening to a podcast and the Duffer Brothers were on, and they were talking about their influences for season 2 versus season 1. And they talked a lot of James Cameron. So they said that what James Cameron did for a lot of franchises is he would come in and he would take the existing franchise and put a spin on it. So with Terminator, you get kind of a slasher sci-fi film, and then he spins it into a time-traveling adventure. And Alien, the same thing with Alien, as almost a straight horror film, to Aliens, which James Cameron directed, was an almost straight action movie where we got tons of aliens and kind of space marines fighting them. And so I just thought that was something really cool that I would mention, that I had heard that was part of their influence for this season.
Yeah, that is interesting to hear. And yeah, certainly the Aliens comparison is very apt. It's the inspiration there is quite apparent throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a cool transition, because I always maintain that the worst thing to do with a sequel is to make the same thing over again. Like, that's boring. Like, we saw that once, and I understand there's a want and a need to go back to the well and do something that's familiar, that people like it. So if you give them the same thing again, they're going to like it. And that's generally true across the board. But I think that if you're going for something that really kind of exceeds, or at least attempts to exceed the first one, you got to pull it in different directions. And so something like Alien to Aliens, and you're going from Ridley Scott to James Cameron, so you have two very different sensibilities, of course, but by doing that, you have such a different vision and a different mindset, and by pulling it in that different direction and pulling different threads on it, it creates such a different experience. Like, for me, Alien to Aliens, like, I love both of those movies, and in a way they're so different, and despite being in the same franchise, it's almost hard to compare them, because it is almost an apples and oranges type situation, particularly with those two. And I don't think it's quite to the same level. Certainly with Stranger Things season 1 and 2, I think they're pretty tonally consistent between the two of them, but it does diverge here and there in different ways, and it does kind of, I don't think that it retreads too much of the same territory that we saw in season 1. I think it does at least try to offer a little bit of a different spin on things to keep it fresh, to keep it exciting. And I think that I really liked that. I really liked what we got in this season. I thought they did a really good job.
One thing that I missed was the first season had almost, and this might be a terrible comparison, but it almost had like a Goonies vibe to it, with these kids setting out on an adventure to figure out what the fuck's going on.
I mean, I buy that. I buy that for sure.
Yeah, with this season though, I felt like that was largely missing. Maybe that's because the story they were trying to tell, and maybe that's because they paired these characters off in different ways. And I think that's probably the largest contributor to it. But I did miss that. I really enjoyed that sense of adventure that you got in the first season.
Yeah, I think that's kind of in line with what I was talking about when I was comparing it to Guardians Volume 2, is that instead of kind of reusing the same character dynamics that we got in the first season, which is what you're talking about, they kind of changed it up and said, let's pair these characters with other characters to create new dynamics. And so the consequence of that is that you don't get the general camaraderie that you get, I think, with the kids in season 1. And of course, from a storytelling perspective, you have to think about the fact that Mike has gone through a pretty dramatic arc with the loss of Eleven by the end of season 1. That's obviously pretty dramatically affected his personality, and even just Dustin and Lucas. Will, of course, they're all very directly affected by what happened with the Demogorgon, with the Upside Down and all that. Like, that'll fuck your childhood up real quick, So, I mean, I agree. And I think kind of what I was talking about and relating that to what you're talking about is that when you make a sequel, there is an inherent appeal to want to make the same thing over again. And so, if you kind of replicate that adventurous tone of these kids, banding together to solve a mystery, I would probably like it. But at the same time,
and well, to be fair, that it was still present, but I think it was largely present through Bob. I think Bob carried that sense of wonder and
right. Well, yeah. I mean, the first season is very much about discovery. We're discovering there's this alternate dimension, and so now that's old hat. Either kind of go back to the well with that, or you introduce new concepts and stuff like that. And so I guess kind of what you're saying with Bob Newby, portrayed by Sean Astin, Samwise Gamgee himself,
who was perfect for the role. He was great.
He was so good.
Mr. Frodo.
Don't do it, Frodo. Don't do it.
He was so good. I think I told you guys before we started recording. I took some notes as we were watching the season, and one of the episode notes, it is quote unquote fucking Bob. Like, that was my only note. There was no context for it, but I immediately looked at it and I'm like, fucking Bob.
I think it's fitting that he was the one to carry the adventurous tone, because he was a Goonie, going back to his childhood.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
Good call. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I liked Bob. We did get a few other new characters as well. Max is kind of a new addition to the party. Mad Max, yes. She's played by, wait for it, Sadie Sink. And she certainly fills the female void that is left by Eleven's death at the end of season 1. And I thought Max was fucking cool, man. Like, I thought she was a really cool addition to the team. We also get introduced to her brother Billy, played by Dacre Montgomery, who sports some fantastic hair.
And sense of style.
Yeah, man.
He's got that fucking earring, but he drives like an asshole.
He's always peeling out.
That's one thing that I wanted to ask you guys if you noticed. No matter who's driving, everybody in the show fucking peels out. Everybody.
James, did you say something about that? I swear you said something about that.
I think I may have mentioned something about Mama Byers is in the car. She's like drifting the car all the way to the
yeah.
Everybody drives like a fucking madman. Everybody.
There's obviously a sense of urgency in the 80s that's lacking in this day and age.
Yeah, nobody's got tread on their tires in that town though.
Yeah, I mean, what did you guys think about kind of the new additions that we had to the cast? I mean, we had Max. I kind of just briefly mentioned Billy. Bob, of course, is fantastic. We got Paul Reiser, Carter Burke from Aliens, making an appearance as Dr. Owens, the new head of the Hawkins Laboratory. And we got a little bit more insight into the personal lives of Dustin and Lucas. We kind of met, we met Dustin's mom. We met Lucas's sister, who is fire. She's pure fire.
She's awesome. When are we getting Stranger Things : Lucas's sister story?
I'm down. What do you guys think about kind of a lot of the new faces we saw this season?
I thought the additional characters were great. I wanted more Billy.
I feel the same way. I felt like they were always building to more with his character, and then it didn't quite get there.
Yeah, I wanted more Billy. And to add to what you're saying, I don't know if maybe they intended Billy to contribute to Max's character.
Well, they're obviously very intrinsically tied to each other.
Right. Max was pretty good. She was pretty solid. I would say probably, my two favorites would probably be, and Billy was definitely not one of my favorite new additions up until the end there, but Bob fucking nailed it, man. I really enjoyed Bob's character. And like I said, he filled that role of someone trying to figure out what's going on. He's introduced to, I don't know if we've talked about it or not, but it's Will's mom's new boyfriend. And, so he's trying to figure out the dynamic of the family. So that's an adventure for him. And then obviously there's a, Will has his own shit going on and it follows him, and hence season 2 of Stranger Things. And so he's trying to figure that shit out. And, Bob just enters a world of shit pretty much, and he's trying to figure everything out. And I thought it was a very awesome dynamic. And, Added a lot of comedic relief. I thought he did a really good job. So that's probably my favorite new addition.
Yeah, I agree. He was my favorite addition as well. I also really enjoyed Max. I think Max and Bob were the big additions for me. So something I did want to also mention is I just felt like the quality of the production went up. There is so much more planning that I could, like, as far as like blocking and scene movements and transitions and just things that were planned out. It felt like the Duffer Brothers coming into their own a little more, and that may just be the influence of certain directors who came in to help them out. But also, you can tell that we got that upped budget for Stranger Things 2 because the CG looks, I think, a lot better, and we got a lot more of it.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely apparent.
Agreed. All right, I think it's time we enter the Upside Down and get into some spoilers. So, full spoilers for Stranger Things 2. Andrew, is there anything you want to talk about?
There's one episode in particular that Billy rolls up on Mike's house and he starts spitting his game at his mom. And I thought that was fucking excellent. It was so good.
I did not see that coming.
Hey, man, if you're married to fucking Ted, how could you resist that Billy charm? You know what I'm saying? We're all patriots here. Salute.
And he's sitting in his recliner snoring while his wife's reading a romance novel in the tub.
Ted is fucking excellent. I gotta say, just a quick shout out to, I don't know who plays Ted, but goddamn, he nails that character so well.
That one scene where what's-his-face goes up to the door and is looking for Mike, and he says, "Where's our son at?" And she says, "I don't know where he's at." Well, our kids don't live here anymore, and I thought that whole scene was great. Son of a bitch, you're no help, you know that?
And his language.
Yeah, it's so good. The interaction between each and every character of the show is just so good. I mean, it's so organic. It feels so natural. I don't know if that's because it's a second season kind of thing, but it was there for the first season too. So I don't know what it is.
I mean, I think all this whole cast is just super talented, and yeah, it's, you always walk a fine line with child actors, and for a show that is largely focused on child actors to kind of deliver a lot of the emotional punches that it does. Like, they struck gold with a lot of these kids. All these kids, I don't want to say a lot of them because they're all good. Like, they're all really, really good. I mean, we've seen Finn Wolfhard and It since Stranger Things came out, so he's blowing up a little bit. And James and I have been to a couple comic conventions where we've seen Gaten Matarazzo and Caleb McLaughlin, who play Dustin and Lucas, and we listen to them, and they have this very easy camaraderie. Like, they're obviously friends in real life, and I think they probably became friends on the set of the first season, but then they come back for the second season, and it's probably just super super easy for them to go back. Like, they're just having fun with their friends on set. Like, what a life. It translates to what we see as an audience because of their friendship. Like, we can really see, these kids, it doesn't feel like they're acting. We're absorbed in their parts because they do such a good job with it. And I think that extends to across the board. And then it also extends, obviously, to the adult actors as well. Winona Ryder, a little less frantic, a little bit more cleaned up this season for the most part, but also still great, still fantastic. David Harbour is just so good. He is amazing as Chief Hopper.
Yeah, no, he's
the man.
Yeah.
So kind of, I mean, we get these interesting dynamics between characters that we really didn't maybe see meaningfully interact in the first season. And the first one that comes to mind for me, as we see at the end of the first episode of the season, is Hopper has been taking care of / protecting / hiding Eleven from the world. So we get this, father with a surrogate daughter relationship between Hopper and Eleven, and it's such an unexpected story thread for me. I did not expect him to pull it in that direction.
It's almost like the daughter he lost, though.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's such a perfect way to take both his story and hers in terms of their developments, but it's just something I didn't really see coming, but I think it's just handled beautifully. And again, it's credit to David Harbour as Hopper, and credit to Millie Bobby Brown as Eleven. Their dynamic just feels so authentic, and it's such a interesting, cool, compelling storyline for them to tackle with these characters. Did you guys see that playing out the way that it did, certainly with those characters?
No way.
Going beyond the the fact that he lost his daughter and Eleven's got nobody, so she he gravitates towards her. It's interesting because he's a cop and he's a very physical person, where 11 is very metaphysical. You know what I mean? To where everything she does is psionic, and there's a whole different dynamic there that supersedes the father-daughter kind of role. You know what I mean? And he struggles to deal with that, and I think it's just an awesome, very compelling dynamic. I think it's probably one of the best dynamics of the whole show. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's certainly the best of this season. I would argue, and I mean it's so core to the season as well. I mean, it's probably the one that they spend the most time on, so probably makes sense from that standpoint. But it's so well handled, I thought.
Yeah, they run the gamut as far as emotion too. Like they go from father-daughter playful to be the protective father who, they do everything. And that scene where it's all going down and Eleven's kind of rebelling and using her powers against him is like, you're frightened for Hopper. And at the same time, you feel for 11, and they just, both of those actors killed it. The relationship is great all the way through.
It was. Again, full credits to both those actors because they just crushed it. We also, you said we talked about Max a little bit earlier. She kind of brings a different dynamic to the group. She's a new female, so I thought it was kind of an interesting story thread for them to kind of have like a romantic rival for both Lucas and Dustin. They're kind of vaguely competing for her affections throughout the show. And I thought that was kind of a fun way to take it because we have basically, Mike is basically depressed, lashing out because of Eleven's death. Well, quote unquote death. We're in spoiler section now. She ain't dead. So Mike's in a dark place right now, and he's kind of just generally speaking an asshole. But Dustin and Lucas are kind of back to normal, and then Max comes into their lives, and she kicks some ass at Dick Dug. She gets the new highest score and everything, and so I really enjoyed the dynamic. I think that Max brought with all of them in general. Like even with Mike, he's kind of a standoffish asshole towards her. But she kind of pushes back a little bit here and there as well. But I kind of liked that whole dynamic they brought with Max in terms of how she interacted with the party, because that was kind of the new status quo that we got with the party. I mean, we had Will involved for at least a few episodes, and then of course Will gets fucked up again. I was like, oh man, that kid can't get a break at this point. But how'd you guys feel about I guess Max in terms of not just Lucas but with Dustin, Mike, the whole party?
I think it's interesting that in season 1, Lucas was very skeptical of 11, and Mike and Lucas have essentially switched roles in season 2. And Dustin was neutral in season 1 from what I remember. You know what I mean? He tried to be the mediator of all the disputes. But now he's pursuing Max as well, but he kind of falls towards the waistline, and he ends up falling almost as a neutral party again. And I don't know, I enjoyed the dynamic. Like I said, I think that Max almost served as Lucas's 11, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely got that vibe.
Max is a cool addition. I was on board almost right away. She added this, she brought this, more gritty, experience, because I feel like a lot of the kids in their group, in their party, haven't had a lot of life experience, and she's been through a lot. And like you say, she kind of filled that 11 role where she was, not to mention she was also a female, but she brought that
she adds a little romantic tension.
Yeah, there's also that romantic tension.
Well, not only that, but she's experienced some shit. Her parents are divorced, and she's had to move across the country and all that other stuff. You know what I mean? She's got a little bit of a darker thing to her, where these other boys have not. I mean, they experienced the upside down, but
they still have a pretty happy-go-lucky attitude about things. I mean, pretty blasé response. Right. They got Will back. So I mean, there's a point where their lives could have taken a very, very dark turn if Will didn't come back. But with him coming back, they kind of mostly reset to a status quo with ish.
Let's talk about Will.
I was going to say, Andrew, you mentioned the switching of roles of certain characters. And I also wanted to mention, it seemed like Will took on kind of the 11 role where he had powers or something going on. And then Hopper was captured at one point. So Hopper became the Will role. And then, like you were saying, Lucas and Max kind of switched roles. So I just think that's really interesting that they kind of kept some of those same, I don't want to say archetypes, but kind of those same dynamics and just shifted characters into different spots.
Yeah, it's definitely, they did a really good job of that, I thought.
Yeah, it's a good way to keep it fresh, too.
Will got fucked up by that mind flayer, though, man.
Well, you know whose fault it is. Fucking Bob giving him some terrible advice. Just tell him, go away. Go away. Easy peasy.
Go away, Mr. Frodo.
Mr. Frodo. Share the load.
Share the load.
Anyways, I'm sorry. And then, but, oh God, fuck. Frodo. Share the load. But when that motherfucker had that seizure, I felt I was like, man, this is some Halloween shit. That's some frightening things that's going on. You know what I mean? I think they were burning something. I think he burnt, the lab started burning or whatever.
Oh no, yeah, it's when they I think they go down and start burning. Like I think they get Hopper out of there or something like that, and then they bring the soldiers down there, and they start burning everything and like the underground vines and everything, and then he just starts fucking writhing on the ground there. Yeah, that was insane.
Yes,
and the scream too. The scream was very unsettling.
Yes, the scream had that. Yes, it was also good. All that stuff was awesome.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, man, like Will, like they. I didn't think they would do it. Like, I thought that, you know, for this season, like, all right, we gave Will enough shit to deal with season 1. And, you know, they alluded to it at the end of season 1. You know, he spits up a thing. So I assumed that there would be some sort of consequences for his extended stay and the Upside Down. But, I mean, he went through the fucking ringer again.
He can't. The tornado monster went ahead and just got into him. What, episode 3?
Yeah. But at the end of 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Will.
I think the lowest point of the show, though, was probably 8. I don't know her name.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought you meant episode 8.
No.
But he means the character 8.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes, the character 8. Yeah, yeah. So you want to go ahead and talk about that? Because for me, this is really the only thing in the show for me that did not fucking work at all.
I felt like they kind of shoehorned her into a... I mean, I think that the other children could play a very significant, very interesting role. I thought her powers were cool. I just don't think that they utilized her in a meaningful way.
Yeah, well, and they set it up, I thought, in an interesting way. And that, you know, the first scene of the first episode we get is clearly kind of saying, hey, 8 is out there and she's got powers. So it's kind of an intriguing concept. And I thought that would probably play a much heavier role than it did, I think, in the overall season. But it really was kind of sidelined outside of that for at least half the season. And then episode 7 rolls along, and then we just get this whole episode dedicated to 11 kind of going out, meeting her and hanging out with her crew and learning a valuable lesson. And it just felt so fucking out of place for this show. It felt like network television to me, in a way that I think that the rest of this show doesn't.
I'd agree with that.
I think this show is really fucking good. I saw someone make a Heroes comparison. I was like, yeah, that felt like Heroes. That felt like a Heroes episode right there. and you know, well, I mean, I liked the first season of Heroes. It kind of fell off the wagon after that with the writer's strike and all that, but that's a conversation for a different day. But it felt like a clear-cut step back, not just in terms of the content, but in terms of the quality. Like it you know, it still had that 80s aesthetic to it. I liked kind of the look, like the punk look of her little crew and everything, but man, it fell flat for me. And it really kind of, as you were kind of alluding to with the pacing, is that it starts slow and then it gradually ramps up. And you know, episode 6 is where shit hits the fan. And then episode 7 just immediately draws it to a halt, spends 40 minutes on this story that ultimately all it does is serve the purpose to say that, hey, 11, like, go back home and, you know, maybe don't be a dick to Hopper, even though, I mean, he's been a dick to you. Let's be clear. But, you know, it's just kind of giving her a lesson. And I understood kind of what the overall purpose that it served was, but I just felt like you could have done that in like a 10-minute subplot that was intertwined through like episodes 4, 5, and 6 or something like that. If you needed to write it in that specific way, I think that you could have handled it in a less clumsy way where it didn't just totally stopped the show in its tracks.
I would have enjoyed seeing, that girl come back and try to fight the monster with 11. I thought that's what I thought they were going to. You know what I mean? I thought they were alluding to the fact that this person's going to be involved.
Yeah. I think from what you guys are saying and just my little 2 cents about it is, I think it felt so much like sequel bait. Like it was like, this is just wait till all of these numbered people team up and fight some other creature, I don't want to jump to the very end, but like kind of knowing how it ends and knowing that there's other powered people out there, there's probably a potential for people to team up in the future. So it just, like you say, it kind of stopped it in its tracks. I didn't hate the episode. It was fine. It just wasn't on the same level as the other episodes, I would say. And like you say, I really feel like it definitely slowed down the pacing and kind of brought it to a halt for that episode. It was a little bit of character development, like you say, for 11, but it could have been done faster. I agree.
Yeah. I honestly, I think that was really the only thing that sticks out to me as something that I just didn't really like. I'm trying to rack my brain. Like, there was story approaches that I found surprising, but I liked them. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really kind of didn't really do anything for me.
I kind of didn't. I was fine with it when push came to shove and the show went with it, but I kind of didn't want the whole hive mind thing to be how they took down some of the threats. But it is what it is. I'm not going to complain about something that ended up being fairly well executed.
Yeah, I thought that was handled relatively well. I think there was enough meat to the bones in both episodes 8 and 9 that it didn't bother me too much, and I think there's still clearly much story to be told. That I think this isn't the end of that particular story. So
I found myself asking a question though. Maybe you guys can give me a little bit of insight to some Stranger Things lore. So, for example, in the very beginning, you find out that 11 escapes the Upside Down by ripping through a tear in the school, right? Now, throughout the show, man-made objects are present in the Upside Down, right? There's cars in the Upside Down. Man-made buildings are up in the Upside Down from season 1. Will's little fucking cabin or whatever the fuck he made was in the Upside Down. How do these structures get built in the Upside Down without people building them? Because people aren't present in the Upside Down. Nobody sees people. So do they just appear? What do you guys think about that? Or maybe I should just, maybe I'm dwelling on the wrong shit. I don't know. But I found myself asking myself, why is there a school in the Upside Down? Why are there cars in the Upside Down?
I like to think that what happens is, as it's being constructed, ghostly upside down pieces of wood are being, tacked on into boards, are being tacked into walls and that kind of thing. Like very slowly, it's being constructed in the Upside Down by ghostly figures.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think that's ever really clearly explained, other than it's just a mirror dimension where everything is basically exactly the same. So I assume there's some sort of mechanism for making that happen, but I guess it's probably just not plot relevant for it to explain exactly how that works.
If it's mirrored like that, then what is the Cthulhu monster? What is the Mind Flayer? I mean, is he just do we just take him at face value from what they got from D&D? Is he just a terrible hive mind of all the creatures in the Upside Down?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't really know what a demon gorgon is. I mean, we see the gestation process of the demo dogs is Dustin. He's very clear that that's what they're called. Like we see kind of D'Artagnan grows from being a little fucking pollywog thing to being a full-on demo dog. So we kind of get that, but we don't really know what we still don't really know what that is. Like, why is that a quadruped, whereas the one we saw in season 1 is a biped? And why is there this big, shadow monster creature thing that's floating throughout the sky? Like, is that just the beast that inhabits the dark dimension or the Upside Down? And does the hive mind just control his minions?
But not totally, though, because Dart was he died in front of the fucking chocolate bar. He wasn't running towards the hole with all the other ones.
Well, he was still in the physical realm, right? When he died?
He died in the tunnels. He approached, Dart approached Dustin and all them, and Dustin and Steve were trying to escape the tunnels, and then all of the other dogs, or all the other demodogs or whatever, they all ran past him and I guess tried to protect the hive mind or tried to do whatever.
I mean, were the tunnels, were they literally part of the Upside Down, or were they just infected by the Upside Down? I guess would probably be kind of the distinguishing factor for that.
Okay, you had the same question I did, because I was going to ask that too.
Because I initially, when Hopper dropped down, I just assumed that it was parts of the regular realm that were infected by the vines from the Upside Down somehow breaking through. And then when I had rewatched that episode with James, and I kind of was just like, oh no, I think he just somehow dropped into the Upside Down, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, I guess, maybe there was...
Visually,
the vines were... He opened some sort of gate, but I think visually it looks like the Upside Down. You still, got the particles kind of floating throughout the air, but I think thinking back on it now, I have to assume that it was just infected by the vines, the virus, or whatever it was that it was carrying. Had it just infected that, and so visually speaking, it looked like it was part of the Upside Down, but I think it was still part of the physical realm, because that would explain why D'Artagnan dies, is because the hive mind gets severed. He's still stuck in our physical realm. The virus has died, so he has no connection, so he's effectively brain dead at that point, right? I mean, does that follow?
No, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, until you mentioned that, I was going to argue that it was the Upside Down, solely on the fact that when he dropped down into the tunnels, the camera work shifted to where it was upside down. And
I mean, and just a side note, that was a really fucking cool shot, by the way.
That was awesome, yeah.
When at the end of episode 4 with it flipping upside down, like, that was really neat. And obviously the implication there is, this is the Upside Down, but I don't know if it's literally this is the Upside Down, or if it's just, hey, this is the influence of the Upside Down.
Maybe it's maybe it's simply the vines penetrating through the gateway and creating tunnels. You know what I mean?
Right.
The vines are coming from the Upside Down. They're connected to the Upside Down. I think that's probably more so what it is, now that you reference it.
Yeah, I buy that. I was going to ask you guys, do you think that the Mind Flayer is just this other creature that's in the Upside Down, or do you think this is like the Cthulhu, like this is like the god monster of the Upside Down?
That's a good question, because that's kind of what Dustin talks about, right? Is whether or not it's, I think kind of the D&D creature that he compares it to is something that infested that whatever the dimension is they're talking about within the game.
Maybe it's possible that the Demogorgons occupied the Upside Down, right? And this Cthulhu monster infected the Upside Down realm and took control of the Demogorgons, and then now he's trying to expand its reach into, the normal Earth, to where he's trying to do the same thing that he did to the Demogorgons as to what he's trying to do with Will. Am I making sense? Or have I had too many beers?
I think that makes sense, yeah. Do you guys think that, so based on that, do you think that when the smoke monster tornado thing left Will at the end, do you think that when it flew off into our world, do you think that's going to come back to play a part? Or do you think that was it kind of dissipating and now the virus is gone?
No. I think that now it's going to look for a new way to infiltrate. I don't think it'll be infiltrating Earth through the Upside Down. I think it'll be infiltrating Earth through normal means.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like the closing shot implies that it's still, it's operating within the Upside Down. I feel like the Upside Down will continue to play a part for the remainder of this series as long as it goes. But I think I agree with you in the sense that, clearly, all right, occupying Will as a physical vessel was, that didn't work. So it's going to have to find some other way. And so I guess it really doesn't matter whether it's originating from the Upside Down or elsewhere, because all it seems to be concerned with is absorbing, or at least taking over, consuming, or whatever the case may be, our regular dimensions. So I don't know. I mean, the lore's cool. I like it. They kind of expanded it in a pretty bad way, I thought, with the Mind Flayer. I really liked the design of it, first of all, but I just in terms of, the Alien to Aliens comparison is accurate in the sense that Alien is one alien, and then Aliens, we get a lot of Demon Gorgon-esque figures in the Demodogs, and then we get this big queen alien type figure in the Mind Flayer. Obviously it's escalated, I would say, far beyond kind of what we see in Aliens, because it's totally crazy, but it's a cool way to expand the universe and the lore, I thought. Yeah,
I'd like to see more. Like, I hope that this isn't, because obviously with the closing shot, the Mind Flayer creature kind of looming over the high school, or the middle school, whatever it was, it seemed like they were implying, like, okay, this thing's not done yet. But I kind of hope we see some more cool, interesting designs for creatures and things that they have to deal with going into the further seasons. I
want to know more about those creatures. I just find, like you said, I think the lore is just incredibly interesting. I'd like to see where they go with it.
All right. So I guess kind of as we're winding this down, I'd say I wanted to ask you guys if you had any favorite moments, favorite episodes, or anything like that you kind of feel warrants mentioning.
I think one of my favorite moments was when fucking Billy goes and hits on Mike's mom. I thought that was pretty fucking awesome. I also thought it was pretty great when Billy goes into the house after Will's been drawing all the pictures. And, he starts to figure out the puzzle and stuff. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, speaking of which, fucking R.I.P. Bob, what the fuck?
Yeah, we got to talk about it. R.I.P. Bob Newby, man. How could they do that to Bob of all characters?
Man, Goonies never say die.
They drew it out, too. They had all the bees sitting there sucking on his stomach and shit. It was really fucked up.
Mr. Frodo?
I tell you what... another favorite moment. I don't mean to ramble on here, okay? But that fucking school dance fucked me up, guys. I mean, it really did. I had some issues watching that shit.
Do you wanna read the text that I sent you before we started recording, Andrew?
Yeah, it's not raining. It's just raining on my face or something like that.
I said I'm not crying. It's just been raining on my face.
Yeah. That was some sad shit, right? Am I wrong?
It was so good.
I mean, that was such a good build up to that for his character, like, and just all of them in general. Like that, it was such a good scene.
All of them really had a great moment in that. Like it hit me in the feels all over. Even Hopper and Joyce got a nice scene together. Like, that snowball sequence was really good, and it was such a nice emotional payoff. I think to not just this season, but really to last season as well. And it was really well done. I like to keep track loosely of kind of timelines for episodes, and I saw that it was an hour-long episode, and I saw that pretty much the big conflict had been resolved maybe 40 minutes in. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, fuck yeah, we still got 20 minutes of content. Like, what are they going to do with this? What are they going to do with this? And then, they bring that in. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is it. This is everything I emotionally needed right now. It's awesome. And they did a really good job of kind of, really for every character. I mean, even Steve Harrington got a little bit, little emotional note in there too.
Well, I don't think we mentioned Steve Harrington enough. He was so great in this season. Last season he kind of was a douche that transitioned into having like a redemption arc. But in this season, he went from he was kind of just like the romantic foil kind of situation for Nancy's character.
Well, they continued that will they won't they with Nancy and Jonathan, which I wasn't a huge fan of, I guess. Going back to things that I didn't love, I kind of felt like it was a been there, done that type situation as we had with season 1, but clearly they felt compelled to revisit it and I guess definitively say that nope, Steve's out, Jonathan's in.
What'd you guys think about the conspiracy theorist?
He was fun. Brett Gelman, man. He's hilarious.
Yeah,
I think I've seen him on At Midnight a few times, and he was always comedy gold on that. That whole sequence. How was the pullout?
Yeah.
Oh, it was. Yeah, he was good. He was a lot of fun.
A lot of enjoyable things to write home about.
Yeah, is there anything you guys want to last minute touch on before we kind of just give our overall thoughts and kind of wrap it up for our thoughts on Stranger Things 2?
I've talked about everything I need to talk about.
Yeah, I think I would just mention that how funny it was. It was really fun and really funny all the way through. Funny parts to balance out the great character moments and dramatic scenes.
Can't disagree there. It's just a great show. I was really, really happy with season 2. In terms of how it stacks up with season 1, I don't want to say which one is better than the other right off the bat because it's so fresh in my mind, having literally finished season 2 maybe a few hours prior to starting this podcast. So I feel like I need to give it a little bit time to kind of simmer in my brain. But I really, really liked it. Like it's so refreshing to go back and, even the first few episodes where it is maybe a little bit plotting in terms of the pacing, like it's just, I just fucking liked kicking back and getting to know these characters as they were a year later and just hanging out with them before kind of things went awry. Like the Halloween episodes, like they did such a good job with that, them dressing up as Ghostbusters and being the only ones to show up at the school in their Ghostbusters outfits. Like there's just a lot of like great humorous touches and a lot of really emotional beats in this that they handle super, super well. So yeah, I highly recommend Stranger Things. I recommended season 1 before we kind of got into it. I highly recommend season 2. I think it's a very, very worthy follow-up onto season 1. I think they really complement each other extremely well. And I know season 3 is in the works. I'm really excited for that. I will be there binging, day one yet again when that comes out. So
No, I agree 100%. Definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I'm totally recommend it. It's just like if we can get a few more shows like this on Netflix or any other streaming service or cable anywhere, it's just fun, quality, good shows that aren't afraid to take risks are always welcome.
All right, so Stranger Things 2. Good stuff. Andrew, tell me what you've been up to this past week.
This week I went on a Netflix binge. I watched Southpaw, and it was fantastic, man. That one hit me in the feels like multiple times. I felt like shit when I went to bed. It was a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Southpaw is awesome. Highly recommend you watch it. The following night I watched Nightcrawler. I really enjoyed Nightcrawler. I thought that was really good.
So it's a Jake Gyllenhaal Netflix binge, it sounds like.
That's what that was, yep. And then the third night, I was going to watch Donnie Darko, but I ended up watching The Babysitter, which is a Netflix exclusive.
How was that?
It was fun. It was definitely fun. It's definitely not Cabin in the Woods tier good, okay? But it's completely over the top. It's funny in a middle school kind of humor kind of way. And I thought it had a lot of character. I don't think it was necessarily the best thing that was ever made, because it's certainly not. But the character was enough to merit me recommending you probably would enjoy it. Go ahead and watch it if you have some extra time. And I got Mario. I've been playing a lot of Mario Odyssey, which is... I did have Mario Rabbids. I do have that game, and I have played quite a bit of that. But I haven't been interested in Mario game in a long, long time. I didn't even play the Galaxy games, which I know everybody talks really highly about. I never played them. But this Odyssey game is really, really freaking good. I highly recommend it if you're into platformers and that sort of thing. It's definitely a very well-made game. And then there's this, which was Stranger Things, which was awesome. So that's what I've been up to.
Very good, very good. James, what you been up to this past weekend? Anything fun to share with us?
Well, yeah, I rewatched Stranger Things Season 1 in anticipation of Season 2. I've been watching Mindhunters pretty slowly, and I know you guys have an episode out on that, so I'll be checking back in to listen to that once I finish. I actually also have a podcast. It's called Ink to Film, and we read source material for novels that have been made into films. So we just did The Thing. So I rewatched The Thing after we read the novel Who Goes There.
Which one?
The 1982 version, Kurt Russell.
The good one.
Yeah, the good one.
I mean, I will say the 50s one, it has its merits, but I mean, 82 is like almost a flawless film. So if you guys wanted to check out our podcast, you can go to Ink to Film on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's at Ink to Film. I've also, I made a trip actually to Colton's house.
Did you now? This is the first I'm hearing about this.
Yep. I was kind of in the upside down. So every time you were in a room, I was in the upside down room. And I played a lot of games courtesy of his whole setup he has there. I played Odyssey, which I don't even think he has had the chance to play yet.
No, I haven't, no. Been busy.
No, you'll never play it.
I played some of that, and I got to be Batman. I put on a VR headset, and I got to run around as Batman for a little bit, which was pretty rad.
Oh, isn't that fucking cool?
So much fun. It's a childhood dream come true, so.
I had so much fun with that. I want to get one of those setups. I don't know, man.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but it's a lot of fun. That's fucking cool shit, man.
It's awesome. So yeah, thank you to Colton for letting me play all his video games over the weekend while I was there.
I had to entertain you. I was at work for a part of while you were here, and then I was still recovering from my very fucked up sleeping schedule while you were also here. So I had to get you set up on those things and turn you loose while I tried to get some hours of shut eye. So yeah, I mean, it was fun having you up here. It was a good time. We went out tailgating for the Florida-Georgia game, which we will not mention in any further breaths.
The tailgate was fun.
The tailgate was fun. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can talk about the tailgate. That's not the game. So the tailgate was great. It was a lot of fun. But other than that, I have a list here. Yes, let me look at my list. Very good. So I finished everything from the CW week 1. So it's been through week 3, so I'm 2 weeks behind on everything right now, but I wanted to update my CW power rankings to reflect the full CW slate that I watch. So, you guys ready for this? Ready for this?
Drop it on us, man.
Number 1, Arrow, Legends Tomorrow, Riverdale, Supergirl, The Flash. Boom, 1 through 5. You heard it here first. That's how I feel about it all. But coming up for me in the future, I will be playing Super Mario Odyssey, you dickhead. Just for your information, I have been working. It got here on Friday. I was at work Friday night. I was busy Saturday tailgating and watching Stranger Things, and then Sunday I was busy watching Stranger Things and recording podcasts, so I haven't had time to play the video game yet, but rest assured I will be playing it, and next week I will have my impressions of the 5 minutes that I play it.
It'll grip you, dude. It'll be fun.
And beyond that, Andrew, you were very kind and gifted me Planet Coaster on Steam, and so if I have time I will attempt to give that a whirl.
Yeah, I just know you used to play a lot of fucking Roller Coaster Tycoon.
I spent many hours in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. I played the other ones too, but 3 was the one that ate up much of my time. So it hits a nostalgia sweet spot for me. Those coaster games, and I've heard good things about this. I think this is actually the same devs that did, I think, at least some of the early Roller Coaster Tycoon games, and they have modern assets to play with. So I feel like it could be pretty fucking cool game. So I'm excited to give that a whirl and see how it is. So, but that's really been it for me. I guess we can go ahead and call it a day on this one. Yeah,
I agree.
All right. Well, first of all, James, we really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a good time. Anytime you guys want me back, I'm down to come talk some movies or TV shows with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
All right, we'll bring you on for all the DC movies. It's going to be a running gag.
That's it.
Anytime a guest comes on, hey man, next DC movie, we got you. Don't worry about it, fam. We're doing you a favor. We need someone to talk about it while we just sit and groan in the corner. But seriously, no, it's been really good having you on. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in, sticking with us for our now 13th episode. Our intro-outro tracks are the same, and they're both called Mechanolith, by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Find everything you need for your Watch Review Repeat needs at watchreviewrepeat.com. Gmail, if you want to send us any comments, feedback, anything like that, watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. And leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, however you're listening to us, through the website. Shout out to my dad, who has been leaving comments to us for the past few episodes, and I didn't even see them there, very sadly. So I read them, and I appreciate you listening and supporting and giving us some feedback. So that's pretty much it. Next week, Andrew and I will be covering Thor Ragnarok, which
Fuck yes.
I think James included, we're all very ready for. I think I mentioned at the top of the episode, reviews coming in are very, very positive. Taika Waititi is a fucking inspired choice, and I think that's going to be, a ton of fun. And so I'm really excited to see what we get with that. And we got a lot of good episodes in the future. So, if Marvel isn't your thing, if Marvel's not sending the checks your way like they're sending them to us, then stick around. We got DC right around the corner. 3 weeks till Justice League.
I'm hoping we can get something set up at Ink to Film where we can get kind of a Marvel revenue stream going on too.
It's good, man. I can tell you. I can vouch for it. It's real good.
You just got to spend most of your episode talking about how great Marvel is. It's not a big deal.
We'll have to try that.
All right, I guess that'll do it for us here at Watch Review Repeat. Again, thank you to James, Andrew. Thank you again for joining me on this wonderful journey of knowledge and film and television. To our listeners, I hope you have an excellent week, and come back next week for Thor Ragnarok. Take it easy, guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks.